How's it, guys? Today I just wanted to touch on the subject of the spirit and the flesh and all that, because sometimes it can be a bit confusing. And I had somebody, when I questioned how exactly that actually happens and how do I know that I am actually in spirit, when I had asked somebody that same question one day, they said to me, "Well, that's easy. Simply ask yourself, how do you get to heaven? And if by any chance you think it is by works or the law or by what you do, you're in the flesh." Simple. So I said, "Is it not because I sin?" And then he said to me, "But there is only one sin. And the only sin of that is to deny Jesus Christ crucified is enough." And he said, if you were to say that Jesus Christ is enough, then you would be in spirit. These are the only two things that distinguish between the flesh and the spirit of your understanding. And that really helped me a lot. I used to think, okay, if I'm being good, then I must be in spirit, and if I'm being bad, I must be in the flesh. Not quite. It's very important to have an open mind when it comes to Jesus Christ and not be narrow-minded. He was a very open-minded being. And personally, he has shown me things that this world would call blasphemous. But through the perspective of a child's eye, you don't see the wickedness of it, but rather the innocence for what it is. Your mind doesn't elaborate in any wicked way on the topic. And the way that I enter spirit is knowing that Jesus Christ crucified is enough. I've tried to, we enter through his blood and all that, but it's a bit complicated when you do it like that. The best and easiest way, personally, that I felt for myself is through Jesus Christ crucified, to acknowledge to myself that Jesus Christ crucified is enough. The moment I do that, I have entered spirit. What that looks like, no one knows. Only God knows what the spirit looks like. Only God knows what the spirit looks like, because God's spirit is very unpredictable. He does what he wants, when he wants, and how he wants to. And all he needs from us is total submission, and it's submission to the gospel that Jesus Christ crucified is enough. It's the only way that I can enter, and as long as I know that Jesus Christ crucified is enough, I'm in spirit. But the moment that I declare that I go by works or by what I do or by what I see or by the law of Moses, I'm in flesh. It's as simple as that. And personally, it's blown my mind. It's really blown my mind. I'm an extremist. I love doing extreme things, and there is no spiritual high than the Holy Spirit. I used to think that, how could it be so exciting? It must be a very boring life to be led by the Spirit. But on the contrary, can I tell you something? I believe that it takes the most courage in the entire world to be a true Christian than to go through any other walk of life, because it requires you to be persistent, it requires you to seek, it requires you to ask, it requires you to endure, it requires you to forgive when others would judge, it requires you to continue loving when you're provoked to hate. It's within yourself that it tests the greatest person within you. And that's the hardest part to actually overcome, is within ourselves. And that's why we need the Holy Spirit. Through the law of Moses, we weren't granted the Holy Spirit. But through Jesus Christ crucified, we are granted the Holy Spirit. But what it looks like, only God knows. Jesus said to the Pharisees, he says, "You claim to know what evil is. You claim to know what sin is. Therefore your sin remains." They were so narrow-minded on their own way of thinking. that this is condemnation and that's judgment and you go to hell for this, that they couldn't perceive what Christ was actually trying to show them, because they didn't trust him with an open mindset of what he was trying to explain to them. And with salvation, you need an open mindset and unconditional trust. I hope this helps you guys. Keep well, and God bless you. God bless you in abundance. Remember, if you're not feeling it, you're thinking it. And if you're thinking it, you're not feeling it. You've got to feel it. Faith is all about the feeling. Amen.